poll attacks, and the misspelling is purposeful and perhaps too clever by half, but that doesn't describe what I'm doing. Hope you all are having as good a day as a Monday can possibly be. And poll attacks, I was thinking this morning on the day that we celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday, of the Voting Rights Act and other legacies of what we thought was a bygone era, that post construction. And of course, the wind just came up now, so I'll apologize and hope to filter that out. Post As we went through the Jim Crow era, and then had the Voting Rights Act to protect the interests of all Americans, because there were broad swaths of the United States that were dedicated to keeping people of color, women first, um, perhaps. I took, as the Brits might say, I took the piss out of Woodrow Wilson the other day on the pod, because he was uh, absolutely miserable human being when it came to race. And at the same time, like so many vagaries of the world we live in, not no one thing is all good and all bad. That would be very boring. And of course, we're not living in boring times. But Woodrow helped move along women's suffrage, right? At the same time as he was reintegrating the federal workforce. So, congratulations for multitasking. No, maybe we'll just leave old Woodrow alone. He had a massive stroke, lost the use of half of his body, and uh, you know, um, uh, his wife Edith basically completed the presidency for him. So I'll try to leave old Woodrow alone for a little bit. He's just, he was a man of his times, and many of the white men of those times were miserable effing racists, and he was one of them. And he was also your president. But but I what I feel when I watch and listen and read, which for reading, of course, is listening, as I learn and review earlier lessons, as we often do when we're reminded of a great man like Martin Luther King Jr., is that everything that he fought for, of course, the Voting Rights Act, you know, Dr. King left us in '68. Um, as the song reminds us, early early morning, April 4th, Lorraine Hotel, Memphis. Um, but the last few protections that are we'll call the remnants of that hard fought victory that was the Voting Rights Act, is on shaky ground. And this current Supreme Court has done everything except say explicitly that they want to eviscerate the remnants of that act that helped to correct uh, more than a century of profound injustice, much more. So we're going to have another reckoning at some point. Now, this current administration, the regime, is not the one that's going to get us there from a productivity, um, team building perspective, but their behavior is going to be almost almost entirely responsible, ironically, for getting us back to that place where we need to get to build a consensus to make some positive change, even as we all know the difficulty in making constitutional amendments. We can make laws. We used to have a Congress before they took months at a time off and decided to cower in the bathrooms of their Senate and House office complex and hide from their duty like miserable whining cowards, which is what we have right now. It's and I am referring to the Republicans, the GOP, right? Because clearly the Democratic Party is not without fault in to a degree in everything because it takes a village, as a great woman once said, and it takes a village to f things up, just as it does to build or rebuild them. And the Democratic Party's, I would say, the greatest fault was that they were, well, yeah, Project 2025, I'm sure, but he couldn't do all that. Trump couldn't. Trump, he had one term already, and he didn't do all that. So if he didn't do that, why would he do it? Whatever the whatever the uh, I can never I could never say pearl clutching because it made me feel uncomfortable. Now, anytime I hear pearl clutching, it makes me think of JD Vance, which makes me feel sick. If he were powerful enough in influence to have that kind of impact, but it just makes me. It's gross. He's a terrible human being who's basically disclaiming his beautiful and more intelligent wife because her skin happens to be much more beautiful than what he was born with, and he has mixed race children, and he's trying to run away from them, and has said in his own words that he would be happy that when his wife decides to come around to his Christian way of viewing things. Um, so that's he didn't need that to make him a miserable human being, but it certainly is puts a cherry on top of the sundae. If from my perspective, excuse me, sorry for the background wind. And I'm just determined to be outside. It is right around freezing degrees, which in here in northern Massachusetts, where we do Fahrenheit, and freezing's easy, right? So that's 32 degrees. And I think it may be 33. Um, the sun is melting a little of the snow that we got last night. So there are drips in the background. They may be audible. They're not on the microphone or camera, so that's always a positive. But it's and we'll let me do the hard math in Celsius. That would be zero. So there we are. It is in that on Martin Luther King's birthday in Massachusetts. That's what you get. This is actually like summer. What I when I was reading over some of the Voting Rights Act and thinking back to the timeline of Reconstruction, Jim Crow, Voting Rights Act, and all of the hellacious behavior. And, it's easy to stigmatize ruby red states in the South. but their behavior was reprehensible and remains so to this day when it comes to black and brown people voting without hurdles and roadblocks. And they're being erected today. New ones are being erected right as we're meeting now. I am assured of that fact. But poll taxes, right? As you probably know, and this is going back to maybe the civics class that I took in the '60s. And one of the neat devices of the poll tax was not only that you were requiring workers that were day laborers, if they were fortunate at that particular time, when they won the right to vote, charging them for the right to do so. And then, whether or not they voted in a particular election, if they failed to pay the tax, that would accumulate and in some places accumulate interest. So when you're like, oh, well, your wife says, honey, you didn't vote in the last elections. Okay. Okay. And you show up and the poll tax, which is, we'll call it $1, you didn't pay the last time. So, or 2 times. So there's $2 on account that's been accruing interest, and it's accruing interest by the cracker mafia math majors. So your $2 has been in the hands of Steve the Rifleman Flemmy or somebody, and now it's $10, and you don't have $10 extra for that. And you're just like, hon, I'm gonna have to pass this time. You're not paying the tax, so when you come back the next time, it's 42.50, right? And that was how poll taxes worked to disincentivize poor and black and brown people from participating in the franchise because it was cumbersome, it was expensive, and it was confusing because then you show up and you have to essentially see. It's like you have to go see uh, excuse me, like Simon Legree, the paymaster, right? So you have to see the guy with the metal box over there, and whatever he says goes before you get to vote. And that has a lot of the current day's behavior of ICE and the Trump administration kind of has echoes of that time because they will be trying to. There are laws about putting people in voting places for the purposes of intimidation. But as we've learned, Trump is more interested in breaking laws and saying, come and make me stop. And it's, if you have them like the fire hose approach with fake news, with disinformation, with misinformation, when it comes at you as a trickle, like the melting snow that is falling behind me, it's one thing. But when it's coming at you out of the fire hose, you can't do anything else. You have to focus your entire attention on combating that one risk. Right? So that, poll taxes did that. And there are different ways of present. You can't today charge people money for the privilege of voting, but you could certainly, without a great deal of imagination or or moonshine, you could imagine ways that these authorities dredge up some imagined former misprision. There are also laws against people convicted of particular crimes, voting and all that. And Pam Bondi, now that she has the voter rolls of the majority of states, and she's with the help of some Elon-esque knuckleheads, is trying to make lists of people that are sort of marginal or didn't re-register or moved or got remarried and didn't, or got divorced and didn't change the name. And you know, you can imagine that a deep and AI powered analysis of voting rolls will, even if they don't find a a bona fide irregularity, they'll use that to manufacture irregularities. And if I were a cynical person, which I am mean and evil, but not often cynical. I would, if I were Pamela Joe Bondi, and was armed with that information, then I would perhaps send out notices, letters, or otherwise. What a quaint idea! The mail service, which we'll get to with mail-in voting, but I would send notices saying there has been an there we have determined there is an irregularity with your voter registration. This is from, organization elon.com, because your local precinct, your city hall, your voting apparatus in your city isn't going to do this to you, but outside, better financed organizations will, and they'll put their little dirty minds to it, and Stephen Miller and Pamela Joe will come up with some ideas. So that leads us to the Postal Service, which is a shambles, as we've all known for decades. That there's more bailouts than Enron, and still don't get it right because they don't ever they. It's like a patching a hole in the knee of a child's pair of jeans, right? Uh, I've got a few, but it cost a few too many bucks to keep buying clothes for these little rugrats that just that have the temerity to keep growing, right? So yeah, I mean, you patch it like we do for everything. We patch tires. We can't afford to go out and buy a new freaking tire, so we patch it. We do that to make ends meet, and that's the same thing that's happened with the Postal Service, because there are unions. It's all sorts of layers of government, and I'm surprised that we didn't hear more about it in the big lie, which was waste, fraud, and abuse that the Republicans have been uh, crying with their shrill voices about, and then not doing shit about, which is um, the 2025 big lie, right? Waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm surprised that we didn't hear more about the Postal Service because it's such an easy target. Now, the non-cynical cynic in me says maybe they've kneecapped it technologically or otherwise in such a way that they can use that to interrupt the other bugaboo that Donald Trump now seems to have, which is mail-in voting. And it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, because so many of the mega hopeful historically use mail-in voting. There's tend to be. It's the real dyed dark red mega uh, freak shows are we've you you've seen them in your IG reels and elsewhere, right? Some very frightening human beings that are beyond even their local pastor's ability to help, right? Which is, it's sad. Except if they didn't have the vote, then I'd have a great deal of more compassion. I get him a ham sandwich, right? But these people also rely on mail-in voting. So is Trump going to be able to excuse me, I was gonna say shit can, but that's not appropriate. Will Trump be able to frustrate the purposes of mail-in voting sufficiently to make an impact while not shooting himself in the cankle, right? That if he disrupts mail-in voting, he's going to have a disproportionate impact on his own voters. That would be horrible, wouldn't it? That would be very sad. If we heard about that the day after the election on from Megan, whatever happened to you, freaking Kelly, or somebody that that the Donald did it to himself. Right? That would be wonderful. Not likely to happen, but they could certainly mess with because they have all the levers of power. And they're trying, and they'll be successful in some jurisdictions to say, for instance, that if it, even though it was postmarked by voting day and common practice has been the law and common practice has been that if it was postmarked, then we're counting it. If we have not enough people to count, as long as it was in the safe box, then and we have to honor our military. And while you're living on Diego Garcia, right, and you're like, oh shit, I forgot to send in my ballot, right? And obviously it's not standard mail from Diego Garcia, it's military delivery, and then a part of the mail service may get involved depending on where their home base is, right? Like, oh, good, thank goodness it got in by the first Tuesday in in November. But Trump's trying to twist that around a little bit and say that no, if it isn't counted by voting day, then it doesn't count. And so you can see another layer where Pamela Joe Bondi is going to have she's not coming up with these plans. But even though they're horrible people, excuse me, Stephen Miller and Russell Vogt, not spelled VOTE, but kind of ironic that with a name like Vogt, you're going to have such a outsized impact on one of the greatest American institutions. That they're not dumb. They're mean. They may be evil. They may they'll play fast and loose with the actual laws or accepted practice with the truth for sure. They will do because they will do whatever it takes to win. You can admire that in other contexts. In the Patriots context, you can certainly admire that for a lot of reasons. But when they are bending, it all played out almost in plain view because of the transparency and the tremendous courage of the folks at the county level that ran the elections the last time. And so we got the stories from Arizona and from Georgia. Georgia, when Trump was calling up trying to find those mystery votes in order to overturn the fair election. So that's what he did. He's going to do it again, right? And then the other thing, well, the other item that I found and a delight from somebody who appreciates absurdist tales is these tests, right? So in the old days, and you may see it again, they imposed literacy requirements for people to vote, right? And you could imagine that those tests were not applied equitably regardless of race. So you could there were instances where the people of color were given sort of a different set of questions, or their performance was graded on a different scale than others, right? To say that you're not eligible to vote because you ain't smart enough, which, hearing that from a moonshine sodden uh, 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 cracker with a white hood in Mississippi must be pretty hard to take, right? That would be a little bit insulting, right? But that happened, and these are all things that were addressed to some degree. Not the postal service, some modern issues, but these devices, these roadblocks that were assembled, and quite frankly, some of in states like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and others in that belt, Bible or otherwise. These games were being played into the '60s, right? And they would try to disrupt by whatever means necessary and frustrate the ability of people of color to place their votes. Right? So and this is going, this is going to be like the oldies, but in a kind of like in a horror film, because it is going. They're going to have the oldies but goodies from a if you're a Nazi or a Klan member. These will be familiar um, in so many ways. Plus, you have teams, reams, stacks, or you know trash trucks full of young. Think of the Doge, excuse me, the Doge bags, right? The nerdy dudes that came in with Elon to disrupt all of the agencies, the waste, fraud, and abuse that they didn't find, but the agencies that they did destroy, right? That was the Project 2025, was not to help the American people. It wasn't to save money. It was to destroy agencies, to destroy accountability. That is, if there were a title across the top of it, it is the destruction of accountability. And we've discussed it before in this format, where it was the JAG officers at the Department of Defense, right? The inspectors general at every agency, right? Now, of course, you'll say, but isn't voting handled at the local level? And that is true. Thankfully, if we had, if if the if the Constitution allowed Donald Trump to nationalize elections, then we'd already be probably in a civil war. I mean, the game would be very different. But because of federalism, it is something that is that power to regulate and supervise elections is handled at the state and local level, and we have to be extraordinarily grateful. It ain't perfect. There are flaws. There are things that can be improved, like there on everything in life, including the narrator on this podcast. There is room for an improvement in everything that we do, but we have to play by the rules that we are governed by at the moment. Right now, we're looking hard at February, and we have election. We're getting up to that point where we're going to say, 10 months until elections. It's amazing because of the trauma of what we've been through with your boy DJT in the past not quite year yet. It's amazing that it's a horrible system that these folks have to spend so much time campaigning, which means begging for money, which means corruption because they have to do it fast. It's a it's a system that is flawed in many ways, right? But it's what we have now, so we have to prepare for the system that is in front of us, and we have to be victorious in November 28 with all of the the aforementioned destruction of the remnants of the Voting Rights Act is going to make 28 an even tougher lift because they're going to, majority minority districts, they're going to be, slashing, burning, and looting, whatever you like to, however you'd like to characterize it. It's going to, it, if we win the midterm elections, no high fiving time, no pat on the back. Have a beer. I'll be jealous. Have an ale. Have something. Have an edible. Have something stronger. And celebrate for 15 minutes, but it's going to be back to work on the general. And then, well, one final because this is so on Martin Luther King Day, we tried to give grace to Dr. King yesterday in a more fulsome way. We, as I am want to do, I got on a tangent because I have a man crush. No, Bruno, just like a healthy appreciation for Desmond Tutu. So I was talking as much, if not more, I apologize, Dr. King, about Desmond Tutu because he is, for some reason, he he's a magnificent human being that the reading about him, I watched some of his speeches last night or early this morning. He fills me with such joy and hope 5 years after his passing that a human being can be so selfless to take the lumps that the good Archbishop did on behalf of his people in South Africa and just come back. It was kind of what I was writing this morning where I was. I was probably on freaking TikTok, David Ellison's influence machine for elections. That you what do you do with Nazis, right? You just look right at them and you smile. But at the same, you kill them with kindness and then you bury them, right? But you keep the smile because these white Christian nationalists, the bad actors that are riding the coattails of these bad people just for the grift. They're like, oh yeah, no, I'm MAGA because they're getting paid. It's like, I'll be MAGA because I can make a quick $1 million just by sucking up to these disgusting human beings, right? And there's plenty of that out there. But you can't let them. You can't let them. It's kind of who is it? The devil will. You don't look directly at him because he's going to steal your soul or something like that, which is kind of fun. But don't let him steal your joy, right? Cheer for the Patriots. Get ready for the victory in Denver. It's a shame, he said, kind of Um, no, that you don't want anybody to get injured before a game. You want to win. You want to be heads up with the best of the best, and all of the sportsmanship that you want to teach your that you want to teach your. I'm getting frozen a little bit here because it's cold out. All of the lessons you want to teach your young daughters and sons, um, or anyone that chooses to compete in the swimming pool against any other child, is the spirit of honest competition, right? It's um, it's an amazing concept. Right? Yeah. So the final thing is the grandfather, right? So this just it sounded to me just from a when I think about the old plantation mentality people, right, in the South. Like, we were this thing was running just fine without you Yankees telling us how to do our shit, right? Feels like it's like Molly Hatchet Redux or something. That you just stay keep your nose in your own business up there because we got farms to run, and you don't expect me to pick all that tobacco myself. So you know, let us. Yeah, right. No, and there is that kind of aggressive regressive mentality is very much alive today in on at one portion, one subsection, one underground dangerous part of the mega cult, right? That very much is. I talked yesterday about being nostalgic for a time that never truly was, right? Our problems with race, I believe in my heart, I don't know this, but 2,000 years ago, as we were talking about, when people left, well, they left Africa many thousands of years before then, but then went to resettle up north, and people started to move away and evolve biologically, right? And then return. Racism has been with us for forever, and to some degree, but we're supposed to be getting better, right? We're supposed to learn the lessons from the past. And so many people are either willfully ignorant or just mean people, you know, not caring for their neighbors and not listening. They must be all of those people must not be followers of Jesus Christ. They must not respect the teachings in the Bible because if they did, then they couldn't allow themselves to behave in that kind of way. So, um, but before they get to check themselves, the grandfather, which this is the most paternalistic and sort of dark. I haven't imagined fully how it will be implemented, but I feel in every part of my body that there are more people that are willing to try to reconstitute a Jim Crow structure than we even know. I mean, we saw the voting results, but that they are there. There are people now. There are people in that group that saw what happened to Renee Good and are going to say, "I'm tapping out." I mean, little bit of cruelty to black people, but you start shooting the white girls, then then Ethel and I are we are tapping, we're getting in the buggy and we're going to Cracker, but we are out, you know, and we'll just stay home. We're not going to vote. We're not going to participate. We're not going to support, Kamala, or but we're off of the cruelty train. Now that's going to happen, not in a not in a great enough number. But let me just, I'm sorry, I keep going left when I'm supposed to be going, well, I'm not going right, that's for sure. Uh, so the grandfather clause, right, is your, if you're, right, but absurd, right? If your grandfather voted before the Civil War, before Reconstruction, then you're entitled to vote. But of course, if your grandfather was a slave, what were the chances of your grandfather voting? It wasn't zero, but it was closer to zero than to nine. And you can look at your sources on that. But it was a very small number in northern states when enfranchisement was uh, looking at the nation as a whole at that time. But so largely in the South, these grandfather clauses would say that you cannot, and they connected them all together too. I mean, if you think about the poll tax, whether or not accumulating interest, it was accumulated, meaning that it didn't disappear if you showed up and didn't pay it in one year. It was on the books next to your, check next to your name, due and owing, and the grandfather clause. And you take all of those little devices together, and it's what they're going to try to do with all that additional data and the ability to and manipulate it, but utilize it too. I don't, when I say manipulate, I don't mean that each and every way they're going to use technology is illegitimate. That's not what I'm saying at all, because we know it's our world, right? It's AI governs the reason that I only do this on video and don't write anymore is that there are so many folks that are not casting dispersions, but there are people that are putting forth written content that they are holding out as their own work product, and it may perhaps not be true. I'm not saying in every instance, but today in 2026, on Martin Luther King's birthday, observed, not the 15th, the actual birthday, we can still have the opportunity to, if not meet around the kitchen table, we can have a meeting in this format, which is a little bit more personal than that. So, yeah, I just they're going to use a bunch of different devices, and they know that if they whack the postal service, change the rules on, and additionally change the rules on mail-in balloting, poll tax, it's going to be hard, but they're going. If at the last minute, if you think about quote unquote spam, and they come up with well-funded hundreds of millions of dollars outside agencies, if you sent a letter to every eligible voter, excuse me, in the swing states, in the states that you need to pick up, saying that you, sir, have we found your name. We regret to inform you that you are in the Epstein files, and the FBI will be contacting you directly. And we advise you to not leave your home. Um, the the FBI is due to be in your area in the first week in November. So we advise you not to leave your home during that period of time. If our agents show up and you are not at home, then we are going to arrest your children. Have a nice day. Love, Elon. So I jest. But there are, you've heard of the Google machine, you've heard of AI. There are about a million ways that they could disrupt, and they're clever people. So they will you and I will look at that and say, not falling for the banana and the tailpipe trick. Uh, been alive for a while. Um, F off, leave me alone. You're an idiot. But they'll get enough of them, and then as I featured in a post 5 months ago, 4 months ago, the idea of ICE concierges at voting places. And I know what the law is. I know that they can't be in there. But again, if they frustrate the voting and the first Tuesday in November comes and goes, we can go back and we can sue them. We can hold them down, and I don't know what you do to people like that. What I would want to share. You could pour maple. You're in Minnesota. Pour maple syrup on, right, and leave them outside overnight. Whatever it is, but then the election's over and the assholes win. So yeah, just fun projection. Yeah, but based on absolutely horrible past behavior. And I'm going to try to do one thing briefly before I say goodbye, because it's we got yeah, a few inches, three maybe. Uh, if you ask a woman, we got 2 inches. If you ask a guy, they'll probably tell you we got five. I'm going to hit before I shut off the camera, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say restack, share, insert all those other things. The wind's blowing, and I hope it's not hitting the microphone that much. I'm going to switch the camera around and then just do a little pan shot, because the temperature since I've been talking to you, I think, has dropped about 10 degrees and or more, because it's getting really effing cold. But I'm going to switch the camera around and then just shoot a picture, because I'm kind of on the side of my place, and I'm going to just shoot a quick shot across, because the trees are all covered with ice and snow, and it's very pretty. So hopefully there aren't any. Uh, Will I do that? I really did that, didn't I? See, I just tried to stand up, and there is ice. Breaking news: water. It froze. How about that? I'm still going to try to do this. I was going to say something less than clever about hoping that the neighbors are not getting changed in the windows. But in any case, I will try to do that. I'm going to get uncomfortably close to the camera to hit the reverse. Um, so don't so get the kids away from the screen, and I'll do this, and then I will say thank you now, and I'll just give a little pan, and then I will click the bye bye. So bear with me for 1 second. Or I'm going to do it the old school way, because yes. So pleasure as always, and we will catch you sometime tomorrow. Have a great night.